Hey everyone, it's Jamie from IndependenceStTarot and Seasons and Ritual, and I'm here to talk about Venus being retrograde. It is March 7th. We survived Mardi Gras. The funny thing is that they had to cancel a lot of parades, and so they're actually still having parades this weekend, so it's like it won't end. Um, but let's talk about this Venus in retrograde. And there's going to be, I've already noticing like a lot of things coming up about the Venus star point, where she makes it's her pattern every 8 years. Um, and and I'm making this video because I want us to just kind of like maybe not get so mired in all the details, but kind of see an overarching theme that I am seeing in my business and just looking at Venus herself. So Venus represents the divine feminine, and Venus is the ruler of Taurus. And since 2019, Taurus has had Uranus going through there, doing its normal Uranian thing. But it was interesting because all the aspects it was making, what it was signaling to me in astrology was ending of this patriarchal system, right? Which wasn't really on my radar, quite honestly, until I started to focus in pretty intently on this. And so, um, as it was coming in, and I was getting, you know, you know, back into my astrology practice daily, and then it was like, oh, okay, now we're entering into this age of Aquarius, which I do believe that we are in, which I know if you ask plenty of people, they will tell you the opposite, and that's okay. That's the great thing about being in the age of Aquarius. You're allowed to have your own opinion. And so we are, to me, getting out of that age of Pisces, that was thousands, a couple thousand years, and slowly moving into this age of Aquarius. Now, um, again, if you were to ask an astronomer versus an astrologer, they would say we're not in the age of Aquarius. But again, that's okay. As I say, I am an Aquarius and we're always ahead of the curve. So the fact that I'm saying that we're in the age of Aquarius, tracks. So as we go into this age of Aquarius and we leave an old age and into a new age, then we start developing new stories. Okay. We can't keep, um, bringing in the way we did things and the way we thought into the present and into the future. And that's pretty normal. It would be like trying to, you know, travel the United States on a wagon, a covered wagon. Like it's just not going to fit. The way that we move is different. And the way that we expect things to get from here to there is different. So changing the ideas and the myths and the stories around planets as we move out of a patriarchal society makes sense to me. So, um, let's talk about Venus. As I was saying, she is the divine feminine. She does rule Taurus. Taurus is fixed earth. Taurus, we think of the Empress in the Tarot, as Taurus. It usually depicts a woman sitting in a muumuu, in the wilderness. She's usually wearing a crown of the 12 stars, which represents the 12 zodiac signs. That's how I read it. Um, and she's super tuned in with Earth and Earth's little movements and how the sun and the moon and the stars move, right? That is that Venetian energy. I did a video on her. She was an Earth goddess and she was revered. I think it might have been because of Napoleon. I'm not 100% sure. You guys go back and find the video that I did. Um, but she is kind of crunchy. She's with the earth, right? But then she kind of got uh because they wanted to make her more revered, she kind of like got wrapped in with Aphrodite, which is great. Okay. So we see Venus as the goddess of love. But it's important to go back and remember that goddess or that Venus rules Taurus, which is earth, which is tangible, right? Which is also the idea of the mystery if you go beneath the earth and how things are formed, right? But when we think of that, how things are formed, it's usually pretty slow. Okay, and that is that idea of, even gestation. You got 9 months before the baby comes out. And the goddess or the empress is sitting in I should have brought that card, but I haven't been using this other deck. But the empress is sitting, she's always pregnant and she's always waiting to deliver the baby, whether it's a new idea, whether it's an actual person, um, whether it's a new way of being. And so it's important to take this feminine energy that is all about feeling and reading and receiving, but also birthing at that divine timing. And we've got to start working with it differently. Before the patriarchy painted women as, gossipy, competition, backstabby, stupid, airheady, only concerned about their looks, right, to the fairest, um, which is what we were brought up in. Okay. But the more that we move out of that, um, the more we, as women, um, start to remember our own power and our own magic and how creative we are and all the wonderful stuff that we bring to the world, as opposed to what the patriarchal value was. Well, are you going to be a good mother? Are you going to take care of men? Are you going to take care of the home? Those kind of lower vibes. And there's plenty of women that do that and do a great job and thrive in that. Okay. But I'm just saying as an overarching picture. So, uh, or thinking like women being catty. And we're moving out of that, and women are remembering their power and being able to speak up, like so many times, women should be seen and not heard, the same as children. Women just are super emotional and they cause a bunch of problems. And so, you know, living with that value, if you put, if women spoke up, it was a problem, it was you're being a troublemaker, or you're being too emotional about something. And with this Venus retrograde, we're coming into our own to seeing that it's okay to speak up. Speaking up isn't creating the problem. There is a problem, and that's why we are speaking up. Venus rules our self-worth. Venus rules how we value ourselves, how we value our time. And so she is retrograde in Aries. And Aries is that I am present. Aries is ruled by Mars, which is that divine masculine, who at this time has gone direct in Cancer, right? Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon is the divine feminine. And so there is this big, huge rebalancing of how women see themselves as being quote unquote assertive, but speaking up for themselves, believing in themselves, understanding how to use their intuition, understanding it's okay to be sensitive. And this goes for masculine energies too, right? Because Mars in Cancer is, I mean, just submerged in water, right? But submerged in that moon energy because that is what Cancer rules. Um, but it's really important for two things. I'm just going to talk about Mars just for a second. Mars used to rule Scorpio, which is fixed water. So I don't see Mars as being like so freaked out about being in Cancer, which is cardinal water. Cardinal signs initiate. So, cardinal water is that idea that the first time we have feelings, the first time we felt something, the first time like, oh, love, or you saw how your intuition worked. And so you're like, oh, okay, I can do this, right? It's that beginning, it's the first. And we keep having firsts. And that's really important, especially now moving into this age of Aquarius. Even if we say I'm remembering how to use my intuition, or, a lot of times when you listen to other people, they're like, you're going to unlock things dormant, DNA, or, things like that. And that's okay, right? But going back to kind of the nuts and bolts, it's like that first time you felt something and you experienced it in your body. That's the idea of cardinal water. Okay. Mars again rules Aries, which is cardinal fire. So the fact that Mars is camped out in Cancer, which is a water sign, and a cardinal sign, Mars has got to feel a little bit comfortable there. He's got to feel a little bit in that idea, oh, we're initiating something. Okay, so I would like to change that narrative that Mars is totally freaked out. He doesn't know what to do. He's underwater. I don't believe that. If he's underwater, he's enjoying it. Okay. Um, they're making steam. You know what I mean? Like they're making a new, it's still that idea of alchemy, I guess, if you will. And it's this also this mindset that we need to get into that we know how to navigate other areas. And even if at first it seems a little uncomfortable, we're smart enough to ask different questions. We're smart enough to feel things differently. We're smart enough to stay conscious in something that maybe we feel a little uncomfortable in order to get the answers we need, even if it's just like asking someone else, I need help with this, right? When before maybe we didn't feel comfortable asking for help because again, we didn't want to we didn't want to be seen as a problem. Um, we only wanted to be seen as helpful and resourceful because that's how we valued ourselves as women in society. Um, even if it goes to this idea of overachieving, we didn't want to ask, we just always wanted to have the answer. And so we've got to feel comfortable in this shifting environment, even if the shift is coming to the realization like I did have these answers and now I feel comfortable saying that. And the shift would being to in the masculine side of us, not moving ahead so quickly, or realizing we don't have the answer. And we can ask for help, right? The way that we're shifting in communities is completely changing right now. And a lot of times when we're in these shifts, and I hear this from women and I see them from all ages, I mean, 18 to well in their 80s. There is so many women right now saying, I don't know who I am. I have no idea who I am. I don't recognize my face. I don't recognize my body. I don't recognize anything. And this is really important to notice this, okay? And it's good news, you're trending, okay? And I mean, it's too, if you're a masculine or however you identify and you're feeling this, good news, you're trending. And I kind of laugh about it. And the idea is when we've been breaking away from these patriarchal norms of how quote unquote women are supposed to show up in society, and now it's at that crossroad. And whether we kind of notice it consciously or not, we are molded and we are modeled and we see things and we're like, oh, okay, that's what my life path is. And life paths change. Um, but we're in a huge change right now. And so if the DNA in us, this is the best way I can do it, and this is kind of coming to me right now because I never thought to say the word DNA, but if the DNA enough in us is modeled to go a certain route, even if there are parts we didn't agree with, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm supposed to be a mom, or well, I'm supposed to have kids, well, I'm supposed to get married. Um, because it's just been so ingrained. And that's kind of what we followed along. And like there's some women that I talk to that love being married and love being, mom. A lot of them are first time moms and they're like, but I don't know who I am. And my response to that is to honor that and to ask, what am I supposed to be now? Because that traditional model of being a woman, however you spell it, is out the window. It's changed. And that's okay. Is it scary? Sure. Um, is it uncomfortable? 100%. But this is where we are in evolution. And whenever I think about that, because one of the girls that I was talking to the other day in this other group, she was like, every day I look at my face and I see like a new line or something. And it was like she was kind of going from like youthful to old hag and like, and there's a lot of in between, a lot. And it's this in between space that I think we've never really talked about or explored as discussed as women. It's like kids, puberty, 20s, and then 25 to, I don't know, 55, 60. We don't talk about. A lot of times it's because I guess we're in a mother role. I don't know. And then we're back online, right? Living the other parts of our lives. So And there's m more women having babies later in life, you know, great. And so where we are, and what I would ask for us to do, especially as Venus is going retrograde through Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac, which is that I am presence. If you're feeling like you don't know who you are, it's important to ask yourself, who am I today? And if it is you saying your name, if it is like today, I'm, so and so, I do this. I'm also a mother, or I'm also a grandmother. I'm also a dog mom, pet mom. Maybe you have no pets. Maybe you have no mothers. Maybe you're not an auntie, whatever. Um, but it's important for you and for us to start grounding in who we are, what we represent in the present. Okay? That's important. Now, that being said, if you're depressed, if you are feeling out of sorts for long periods of time, it is important to talk to a health professional. We need to feel normal. Even, politics are bananas. A lot of outstanding circumstances are bananas. But this is going back to the core of who we are as people, um, as women, but especially as this Venus is going retrograde. She's going to go over, all this territory that she's already been through with this administration, right? So we're going to start being like pumping the brakes on things and being like, what the fuck, right? And so that's one piece of it. And I want to stress um going over this is like really going over yourself. Who am I today? What am I initiating moving forward? How does my life look today? Are there some old themes that are coming up, which happens over retrogrades, that I really need to address? And the quicker you address them, the easier they're going to unravel and the easier you're going to move through to get on with whatever it is you want to be doing with your life. Mercury's going to go retrograde here pretty soon, which also I find good at this time on the planet. Okay, because we really need to see how we're communicating, what we're communicating, if people are picking up what we're putting down, right? Because we're in this huge shift. And we need to say, this is who I am now. This is what I stand for. This is what I will not tolerate. This is important for my future. This is important for my kids' future. This is important for the kids' future moving forward. Venus right now in Aries is feeling extremely empowered. That feminine energy is feeling empowered. That Mars in Cancer is going to keep things moving forward even when Venus is retrograding back. It is this shifting of power, if you will, not in a mean way, but shifting of power, but how we see ourselves. We have to remember the age of Aquarius is the individual first and then the collective. And Pam Gregory did a great video about living from the inside out instead of the outside in. And she made it so succinct about moving to me from that age of Pisces, which was very watery. We were bleeding all over each other, into this age of Aquarius, where we're able to put up more of these boundaries that we've been talking about. And we're able to say, this is how I live, and it's okay. And it was really hard when we started talking about this 8 years ago or so, or even longer, because we were still so entrenched in the age of Pisces, and we were still so entrenched with quote unquote the female essence, however you want to say it, having to be, nurturers and caretakers and make sure everyone's okay. And the idea of like, if I'm not doing that, well, then I am just a bitch, right? Like, what the fuck? How can that be? It is ingrained in me. This is my life story. This is why there's females on the planet. But now that we are in it, it's easier to see how it's okay to put up a boundary, and it is okay to be living in our own energy, and how important that is, and how we really do see the things that we can change versus the things that we can't change in the present moment. And as we get used to this energy switching again, it makes more sense. So when people are on YouTube or whoever you listen to is talking about this, it just starts to click so much easier. I'll link the video below to how Pam Gregory put it because she put it so eloquently. And it's important to remember Aquarius is fixed air. Okay. Again, like I said, I'm an Aquarius. Um, and I think my sun is at 9 degrees, so I would be a quote unquote young Aquarius, how I read the degrees. And so having Pluto there in these young degrees, it's great. It's great for me, you know? Um, and it makes more sense now, especially having Pluto there. Disrupting those old thought patterns of how we were supposed to show up, you know, how we, in the collective we, not just women, but men, how we were supposed to show up, how we were supposed to behave, how we were groomed, right, to do these things, and how it's changing, and how we can feel lost at times. Lower Aquarius is feeling lost. Lower Aquarius is feeling like you don't fit in. Lower Aquarius is feeling like people do not understand you. And so if you were experiencing those things, that is your aha to be like, oh, wait, people do understand me. People do, listen to me. Even if right now communication is not great. Okay. I've noticed in my life that communicating with people has been a challenge, and that's okay, right? That's okay. Um, in the moment, it's challenging, right? So there's that. But it is about moving us forward to where we need to be. All this shit that's happening with our politics, it's the end, right? It's the ending, and it's showing us what is ending and where we need to be, right? Where we need to go. If we don't like this, this isn't setting the course or the pace to where we're heading. This is setting the course and the pace to what is ending. So I want you guys to really think about that and move with that, um, and create with that energy. Okay. That Venus and Aries is creative, but it's initiation. It's starting something new. It's something that hasn't been here. It's feeling differently about yourself. It's feeling differently about the world, right? It's feeling differently about our circumstances. That is the initiation. That is the fire, but that is going to be within us because Venus is moving through Aries. Two more things I'd like to mention before I end this video. Um, okay, being an Aquarius, and I'm going to speak for but I like being around people. I appreciate everyone's differences. I love all that shit, right? That's when they say we're like usually humanitarians. Okay. Also, though, at the end of the day, if we think you're full of shit, it's really hard to come back from that. It's really hard to come back for that. So if I'm with someone and I'm like, this person's fucking crazy, it's really hard to come back from that. Okay. I don't know if it's because it's the fixed energy within us or within me. I don't know. It doesn't mean that I don't appreciate what you do or appreciate your qualities that make you you, but I also think that if Aquarians think you're a fucking idiot, especially when it comes to like smarts, because Aquarians usually love talking to people that are way smarter than them. I know I do. That's why I cast a big net because I love like all my friends are way smarter than me, and I love that, right? Because I just love to pick their brains and hear how they think. Um, and I got Gemini rising, so I'm sure that has something to do with it too. Um, and I champion that, right? I guess that's maybe my Leo moon. But anyway, if I think you, it's kind of over. It's kind of over. It doesn't mean I won't go out with you, like, and do things with you and all that stuff. But I'm going to be a little suspect to maybe how you've come to your conclusions on things in life, right? I'm not saying that you're wrong about everything, or that person's wrong about everything. But like I said, I'm gonna be taking everything with a grain of salt. Okay. So remember, Pluto is an Aquarius to throw that on everybody. Okay. So before we just be like, oh yeah, that's totally how it is. We're like, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because Pluto is there to disrupt the Pisces thought pattern, the age of Pisces thought pattern, if you will. Okay, we have those five planets in Pisces to get us out of that lower Pisces of just going along with the illusion and feeling bad and like, oh, I got to do this and ooh, okay. And that's kind of how most of us lived our lives, especially as women. Um, so just know that, like, and this is like not only within ourselves, but going to like the political stage and people are catching on or waking up or however you want to do it and they're saying like people are impatient. I don't think that people are impatient as much as is it's just not there, right? And I've been saying that the fire to keep the illusion going isn't there, okay? Because once people think you're full of shit, or I can say this, once I think people are full of shit or I think someone's not very bright, I'm not going to keep following that person. Okay. And so I just want you guys to remember that Pluto and Aquarius, which is the collective starts to think this person's not very bright or like, okay, I'm tired of it. It's really hard to undo that course. Okay. So I hope guys see that as a bright spot. The second thing I want to mention is that the South Node, which is what we're leaving behind, is in Virgo, which is where we're having the eclipse, right, on the 14th. The South Node is what we're leaving behind in Virgo. So the two things that I think we're leaving behind in Virgo is being the martyr, and then also just constantly trying to figure things out for everyone else. Okay, those are the things that we're leaving behind. Those are Virgo traits. Virgo is really good at ascending, honestly, and then reading the room and resolving. Okay, that's high Virgo, also Earth sign. Um, Mutable Earth, which is good to know because we're mutable water, which is Pisces, and they are opposite. But Eris is conjunct the South Node. And our sweet, sweet Eris, who's known as Discord, right? And in the old ways, remember she threw in the apple, and honey, has she thrown an apple again? Okay. Um, and the apple was to the fairest, and all the vain women were fighting over it, right? I'm the fairest, right? And so that was Eris's story to create discord, but it was also usually um what do you call it? Trained towards women to show how shallow and vain they are. Well, she is conjunct that South Node, right? And it is about releasing that story about how women are shallow and vain, releasing that story that women aren't allowed to cause discord, or that women are troublemakers, or if women speaks up, oh God, now I got to put up with this bitch, right? They're conjunct. That story is being released. And the more that story gets released, the more powerful our voices become. And that's really important. This feeling of empowerment and how you get to it is most likely going to be kind of a singular sensation, because of Pluto and Aquarius, but then the voices will all become united or the voices will become louder, right? Because it's taking away that fear of speaking up as a woman or speaking up for things that you believe in, or speaking up in a way that's probably going to offend someone else, that maybe you love or live with or are in community with, right? And it's because all these things are happening simultaneously. Aquarius with Pluto is turning in um, new thoughts, new ways of thinking, ending old ways of thinking, putting a boundary between that Piscean water that was always overflowing us. And then Eris is saying, yeah, you need to speak up because we're getting rid of that idea that you have to stay quiet and just martyr yourself. Like, meh, that's not going to happen. Or you need to speak up because it really isn't your job to figure everything out. And if the idea is like you say, I'm not figuring this out for you, you really got to do it on your own, and it causes the discord, everything's going to be okay. As I say, when people have to figure things out on their own, it's good because it makes them think differently. It makes them come to new conclusions. It might fire new things in their brain that they need to figure out, right? And even if they figure out, like, okay, whatever, I'm going to ask someone else, great. Okay, it's not you, which is great. So really dig into these feelings of empowerment, even if sometimes if we get there, there might be some crying involved, there might be some anger involved, there might be some overwhelm involved. But the idea with this and with Venus moving retrograde through Aries, right? And Aries wants to get shit done. Aries knows who he is. Aries is that I am present, is that when we leave those lower fake stories behind, sometimes we got to cry about it. Sometimes we got to feel mad about it. Sometimes we need to say out loud, I don't know. I don't know how to navigate this shit. What's happening, right? And once we release and let it go, Pisces season, let it go, letting go of that illusion that you got to keep living the same story, letting go of that illusion, we got to keep doing things the same way, letting go of that illusion. You're supposed to know exactly who you are in a time of great change and shift. That's when we do ascend. That's when we do get it. That's when we greet the sun, right? This is all about that rising, right? Knowing who we are, being in community, loving ourselves more than anything else, living from the inside out. This is part of the journey. This is what we signed up for. This is what we're shedding, that old way of looking out and being told who we are. We are really Venus and Aries coming from within, that I am presence, knowing who we are, speaking up and loving it. We might not recognize it right off the bat, but the more that we understand it, the more that we feel it within ourselves, leading from that heart space, the easier it's going to get. Again, if you're super out of sorts and you need, help, if you need to talk to a therapist, if you need to get on antidepressants, all that stuff, go for it. Okay. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance. It can't just be one or the other. I've been in this business way too long. Uh, d- I've been in this business way too long. I've seen way too many things. I do believe there has to be a balance. Let's just say that. Okay. Um, but at the same time, I want this Venus going retrograde to empower you. When Mercury goes retrograde, to empower you. This is a time of empowerment, which is really interesting because if we believe the fucking news, it's a time that we're all getting disempowered, right? And we are going to stay disempowered if we keep living from that outside in instead of taking the cues from the planets where Venus is saying, okay, we've got to live from the inside out. How do we value ourselves? How do we know who we are? What is our I am moving forward from this time on? Okay, you guys, I hope this helped. I'm going to try to keep making more videos with the world's most boring background because it's easy. It's at my house. Okay. If you guys have any questions or comments, please reach out below. I'm on Instagram at IndependenceStNola. I do have Blue Sky, barely post on it, but it's there. And then, of course, my website. Also, I'm getting the Seasons and Ritual calendar up. It's a 3-month calendar that gets us through spring into summer. So, again, it's to help ground us, that goddess energy, right? Venus energy, Taurus energy, to be hyper focused on what's happening in these 3-month periods, in the seasons, if you will, since the name Seasons Ritual. Okay, friends, I hope to see you soon. I will be back soon. Keep working through this Venus retrograde and see it as empowerment.